All right. Good afternoon. Pleasure to have Mandar Apte out here to really speak on this very interesting, very different AMA title, Can Peace Be Profitable? And I think we're just looking forward to this whole discussion with you on this topic, Mandar. So first of all, great to have you here. Thank you. Uh, just by way of a quick introduction, Mandar is actually graduated from the prestigious ICT, which was formerly known as UDCT. I think all of us know as UDCT in Mumbai, and he's actually a scholar from the George Mason University. Currently, Mandar is been really managing the Cities for Peace initiative, and is also an advisor to the special UN project on private sector role for peace building. Right. So I think Mandar, before we kind of move ahead, first of all, once again, thanks so much for coming. And would love to really hear about your origin story. I mean, how did this all begin? Because when I look at your profile, you led a pretty normal life, right? I mean, like everybody else, graduating out of university in the 90s and even in 2000, you made a beeline to the US. You kept a very regular job as a chemical engineer, I think all the way to 2010. But I think really the story changed where somewhere you were in Shell, and when you in the game, I think the whole game changed when you became a Shell game changer, right? So just walk us through this whole journey.
Yeah, spot on. I think firstly, thank you for Karishma and the whole effort behind this Thinkly program and the tribe that you're curating. We do need to make people think. So I think that is where I really reached out to Karishma to look at, can we think about peace before violence happens? Usually after violence happens is where we think about, अरे साला ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए था, अच्छा नहीं हुआ उसके साथ. पर जब तक हमारे साथ नहीं होता है, unless it doesn't happen to me or somebody near and close to me, we don't think about peace. We take it for granted. And today the world we are in, the people who are violent, they are making more noise. Because peaceful people are peaceful, we are having a nice life, goody life. We are going for vacation, movies. So this think peace or rethink peace is the platform that you have allowed this discussion to unfold. So thank you for this. And it's the day of the International Day of Peace. So it's very beautiful synergy of the two. My story is a regular Shivaji Park area, born and brought up, play cricket every day, good in academics, Ruparel College, good in academics, UDCT, good in academics, scholarship to the US, multiple job offers, chose the Shell offer, and was a petroleum engineer for the first 9 years of my 18-year career. And during this career of the first 9 years, in, you can say, hardcore, like roughneck petroleum engineering roles, is where I got to see the world. I traveled worldwide on mega projects. And I realized during these 9 years, Vivek, that many people around me were, intellectually much smarter than I was. But I realized that emotionally they are much weak. They are like kindergartners. Yeah. So that is where I started thinking about how do I build my own emotional and mental strength. Because, life takes you and throws you in thunderstorms and earthquakes, figuratively. And nobody is going to come and help you. You have to help yourself. So that is where I started looking at how do I build that emotional and mental resilience. And the link to thinking about peace or thinking about innovative thoughts comes when in my day job, I'm designing pipelines, Vivek. Mm-hmm. And my evenings, I'd become a meditation teacher, and I was teaching American soldiers in 2009. American soldiers that are coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan war with post-trauma stress. Yeah. So at that time, there was a suicide every 22 minutes in America.
Wow.
And more American soldiers have died in America than in the Iraq-Afghanistan war combined. So that's where I started thinking about, like, what am I doing in my life? Like 9 hours at work. And in my evenings, doing this kind of, sharing with my humanity with others. So one of these soldiers' spouse cried on my shoulder one evening that where were you so many years? My husband slept like a baby yesterday. And so I was in that place of kya raha hu main? And a leader at Shell asked me a very profound question that day. I was discussing with this senior leader. He said, which life is more valuable? Is it the life you live inside Shell, or is it the life you live outside of Shell? And there was no doubt in my answer. Okay, so that is the kind of profound mentor that one of the tasks is have a good mentor, because that can change your life.
Right.
And then Game Changer came into my life. I was hired in the Game Changer program, and the entire interview, Vivek, was based on the last line of my resume, that I teach meditation in the Veterans Hospital in Houston. The questions were not about my technical career, nothing. And at the end, the manager of the Game Changer Shell program, he says, I want to hire you because innovation is also about mindset. Some people get it, some people don't get it. So if you can design a program that takes inner peace as the chocolate, and the wrapper on the chocolate is innovation, entrepreneurship, creativity. So I literally jumped out of my chair and I said, you want me to bring my passion at work?
Wow.
So that is the 2009 story, up to 2009. And then, I was in a flagship program. I ended up teaching 2,000 people at Shell worldwide, this meditation-based learning program. And many times you don't know how to measure the success of these interventions. But early stage innovations, the success is the stories that you get from the people who have participated. Yeah, and some staff left because they felt that, hey, this is not the right place for me. For me and my boss, it was a success story. But for HR, it is not a success story.
Yeah. Right. No, I think this was great, Mandar. Really loved the whole, anecdotes in the story. And I think when you kind of touched upon peace, I think peace in our society, but more importantly, peace in our life is probably the most important thing, right? And it's only when we kind of finally realize what's missing that, we understand that you have to go in that direction. One thing that was actually kind of, I'm thinking about again when I was looking at your resume and as you were narrating your whole story, I think a lot of people have this thing about the calling, that they want to actually do something different. They want to make a difference to the world. Is a regular corporate job that all that it's going to be about? I mean, when you write your obituary, is it going to be that I'm so and so, work 9 to 5 or maybe 9 to 9, and this is what I did? But everybody wants a life to actually mean a lot more, right? When you actually finally shifted to handle the meditation for the PTSD, for the soldiers who are suffering from PTSD, was that like a moment, or was it like a gradual slope that finally landed you there? And secondly, how were you already equipped with meditation? Was that something that you've been pursuing all your life? How did all this come about? Maybe I'm just trying to look for that moment when you decided that switch, when you decided to break through your shell and really become the game changer.
So the reason I started looking and reflecting at my own well-being to start with was around 2002, 2003. The honeymoon period of my Shell job was over. I had traveled worldwide, Marriott hotels, business class flights, but I had picked up bad cholesterol, triglycerides. And the options I had was cholesterol medicine, which may have side effects, or a workshop on yoga, pranayama, meditation practices. So I just took this option. Let me see what happens. And my teachers were two white people in Houston, right? And they were telling me about live in the present moment, pranayama. And I felt embarrassed to the core that, my God, yaar, ye apna knowledge hai. I need to do this. I had no exposure, zero exposure. And so that day I made a commitment that whatever they trained me in, I liked it. I want to become a teacher and bring it in the workplace, because I spent 9 hours at work, at least, as you said. 9 hours at work. So that 2003, 2004 is when the activism in me was sparked, corporate activism. And I started a network within Shell Oil International company called the Aware Network at Work as Responsible Employees, focusing on self-awareness. But this was 20 years ago when mindfulness was not a craze. I was not at Google Bay Area. I was in the hardcore petroleum engineering workplace.
Right.
So that is where the activist or the change maker inside me was like kindled. And, these are not easy experiences because I'm not hired at Shell as a change maker to bring meditative practices at the workplace. I'm hired as a chemical petroleum engineer, right? So your immediate line management thinks of you as like, क्या कर रहे हैं? इसके लिए थोड़े पैसा salary दे रहे हैं हम लोग. So that is where I got in touch with this term called intrapreneur, entrepreneurial thinking, but inside a large organization. And so that is where, I feel a little bit about this intrapreneur do's and don'ts is where we all today as part of this discussion need to build our capacity to become a better intrapreneur, which is a tempered radical. It's a radical. You spot differences or opportunities, but you have to respect the boundary of the organization you work for. But you have to stretch the boundary. So that is where my training in corporate entrepreneurship began in 2003, 2004. And then I mindfully made a decision that, 9 hours I'm spending at work. I'm not enjoying my job. Let me do something outside of Shell, stretch myself to get my mojo back. Right? So that is where I stretched myself. I said, okay, veteran suicide ho raha hai. Let me go and meet them. And that is where I think this whole idea of, suicides is just a mechanism for not being able to deal with the situation. So that is where, violence is not just terror activities, not just terror attacks. Right. Violence happens at 3 levels, Vivek. Action, and it doesn't have to be like beat somebody. It could even be writing an email, copying 20 people that don't need to be copied, pressing the send button. Send and create turbulence in the other points. Violence in action. Then second is violence in words. And the third, more subtle, is violence in thoughts and feelings.
Right.
So that is where the thinking started sharpening that, hey, that is actually where we have to work on. And that is where the Indic philosophies come in, right? All the Indic knowledge systems are about having a good, positive, happy, vibrant peace of mind, where then you don't need to worry about violence at the level of speech and actions. So that is where my thinking and shaping began, that, hey, actually, peace is everything. Right? Peace is everything. That is why we go to work. That is why we take our kids to movies, vacations. At the end of the day, we want peace. Everybody wants peace. I'll give you a small example. Have you, Vivek, been frustrated?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whenever you are in the negative emotion state, frustration, anger, blame, guilt, jealousy, have you told yourself, yaar, maza aa gaya. आज मैं फ्रस्ट्रेट हो गया. कभी नहीं बोलते हम लोग, राइट? ये नेगेटिव इमोशंस में हम लोग जाते हैं तो हम लोग क्या बोलते हैं, यार नॉट फीलिंग वेल, टाइम आउट, आई वांट टू बी माई सेल्फ विद माई सेल्फ. So it's just a clue that negativity is not your nature. Peace is your nature. Contentment, peace is your nature. And we should do everything it takes to come back to our nature, back to our nature, back to our nature. Because that is where life is, happiness is, joy is, right? That's what I feel like India's contribution to this whole International Day of Peace is, you can have world peace when communities are peaceful. Communities cannot be peaceful unless individuals are peaceful.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I think lovely answer. And the whole community, I mean, the people just saying hi, a lot of people are just saying honored to speak to you. This is very interesting. Maybe one question you could touch upon before I really want to touch upon your Cities for Peace. Is there a couple of questions asking that, do you have any interesting experience from your time at, GMU, George Mason University? Any interesting anecdote, anything that influenced your work? Maybe if you could spend a minute on that and then we could jump into Cities for Peace. So I've got the questions come from Rahila. There's a question coming from, from Jignesh. Yeah, no, David. Yeah.
In 2016, I left my day job at Shell at Game Changer. And it was one of the best roles I've ever played in my life. is to manage a social incubator, investing in solving social problems, not philanthropic investments. They have to earn return on investment.
Yeah.
So I had accidentally stumbled on the fact that 20% of oil reserves, shell reserves, come from Nigeria. And with the violence in Nigeria, the equated correlation is there is an increase in the siphoning and stealing of the oil from the pipelines. So that is the business case that I thought that, okay, when there is violence, we are losing revenue as an industry because of the black market. So that is where I started investing shell money, game changer funds in peace building in the communities in Nigeria, not just as a social good activity, but it stops the loss of revenue. So I accidentally discovered on companies like Shell should and must invest in peace building because there is a return on investment. And so that in that spark, I left Shell. I did a scholarship at George Mason University for 1 year. And my interesting anecdote is these were all academicians. It's one of the top 2-3 programs on peace building. And that is where I realized, Vivek, that they don't know much about inner peace. How can it be?
Yeah.
There is no content on this, UN peacekeeping forces, peace building projects, Niger, Cote d'Ivoire, Sudan. They cannot claim a single success story.
Yeah.
And I felt that the reason is trauma has not been healed. And unless the trauma is healed, violence will continue to perpetuate. So that was my first insight as an outsider to the peace building academia. And my second insight is these guys are writing grants. They're going with a begging bowl. Whereas at Shell, I've discovered a business case. So that was my second insight is, business of peace.
Yeah, wonderful. I think the moment you can make any philanthropic approach sustainable, profitable, I think that just changes the game, right? Because your whole way of going around for asking for alms and everything is really, you're not limited by that. So some great points, and I think moving along to you, I think the project that you're really passionate about, Cities for Peace, right? So I kind of saw that, you kind of dwelt on the 17 SDGs of UN, and then you decided that you wanted to really focus on 11, which is really about sustainable cities and communities, and the number 16, which is really about peace, justice, and strong institutions, right? Very obvious question, saying that why cities, why 11 and 16, but would love to hear from your side, because obviously there are a lot of challenges that you look at the urban life right now, but your perspective as to why did you choose this? Secondly, what impact are you hoping to be able to make? And thirdly, can you actually turn this around? So yeah.
Great questions. Any entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship is passion driven. So if you don't have passion, don't begin. My passion was based on my life at Shell, multi-mega billion projects, and these two insights that I mentioned. So George Mason, when I was 1 year, I was reflecting in that year, sabbatical year, you can call it. And I thought, yeah, America, back streets, inner cities, there is a lot of violence. And violence ka nature kya hai? It happens anytime, it happens anywhere. It happens to anybody. It doesn't look at your skin color, doesn't ask your bank balance. It doesn't ask what political party you voted for.
Yep.
So when it happens, we feel sad. Or another mass shooting. Oh my God, it should not have happened. But we do not do anything about it. That was my realization as an NRI. That our Indian community is all over the place. We are in all great creme de la creme jobs. We are not doing anything about promoting happiness for our own child's school, for example. So I started thinking about urban peace, and I looked at mega cities like Chicago, Baltimore, Washington, DC, Los Angeles. And just out of, my wish, I started calculating the cost of violence. And I focused on only homicides. There are multiple types of violence, urban violence, from drugs to burglary, rapes, assault. But I focused on one subsection called homicides, murders. And I focused on Los Angeles because that is where gangs began. And lo and behold, when I write down the line items of everything that the city needs to do after a murder happens and putting a dollar value around it, it was a staggering amount of 1 million per murder. And there is a murder almost every day in the inner city. So that's a huge business of violence. And these are costs that, they are sometimes not accounted for in my calculation. Like if there is a police brutality, police shooting, there is a lawsuit. That's not added. If there is violence in an area, they need more police. More police means more uniform, more cameras, more guns. Like that's a lot of cost. So there is a business of violence. And then I started thinking, hey, business of violence, sab jagah hai. Child trafficking hota hai, usme business, somebody makes money. Drugs, somebody makes money. So that was the starting behind the thinking about City for Peace, a consultancy that helps to either make money or save money, reduce violence, and use those dollars into really public health, really public safety initiatives. So that was the thinking behind it. And the universe kind of blessed it because Los Angeles became my first pilot project. Usually, as you know, pilot projects are small, but here the opportunity was the city of Los Angeles. And so that is where I relocated there. And that is where the journey of Cities for Peace began.
Fascinating. I would love to dwell more into about what's happening in the Indian cities, but I think since you've really spent time, in California with LA, with LAPD, right? Would love to just try and get your perspective about things. If you were to think about America now, it's probably for a large democracy like that, you have around 2 to 3% of the population, which is at any time incarcerated in prisons and jails. It's probably one of the largest number, at least for a genuine democracy in that sense, right? And then obviously people started saying that, listen, the police was so strict. I mean, we kind of treat, let's say, drug distributors and the drug, users in the same way. We look at homeless and real burglaries in the same way. And especially in the blue states, especially like the state of California, you started having a lot of this liberal left movement, which kind of wanted to kind of slow this down, right? They came up with this whole law talking about misdemeanor versus felony. Up to $950 is a misdemeanor, and you can just kind of let them, and then you really have a situation which is now spiraling out of control. I mean, I was in the US, in California last year on vacation. It was a very different US that I'd seen before. Of course, some of it is really on the backdrop of really the pandemic. But the homelessness out there, people following you into the CVS pharmacy, picking up stuff, just walking out, people unable to stop them because you know what? It's not $950. He just probably walked up with $100 worth of food that he really needed, right? And so on and so forth, right? So I think, what you now have is where people are just saying that, listen, in trying to correct, really the extreme side of imprisonment and everything, now we are leading to another problem, which is the homelessness, the drugs, the abuse, the gun violence, right? I mean, how do you really look at this since you work very closely? I mean, do you see an equilibrium being achieved out here?
The problem is very complex, Vivek. And, it is like any complex problem doesn't have one organization or one solution. And that is where multi-party public-private partnerships need to come together. And unless the trauma is healed, right? Unless that trauma is soothed, people are not going to listen to you. So that is where Indian culture can play a role with the wisdom and traditions that we have. We can and we must play a role because we are now in all these cities. We cannot say that अरे मेरे बच्चा हॉलीवुड में गेटेड कम्युनिटी में स्कूल में जाता है उसके स्कूल में कुछ नहीं होगा. हम बात ऐसा कर ही नहीं सकते हैं. As parents we are all scared to send children to school. It's a very ugly state of affairs, and that is because the noise of peace is not loud. And second dimension, Vivek, is it is all about the business model.
Yeah.
Right? It is all about the business model. So just inner peace, trauma healing, all this is not enough. People need real, tangible food on the plate, home to live, basic public needs, public services. So these inner cities, they don't have these basic facilities that you can say the political structure or the business structure has always taken things from them and promised that we will give it to you. So that is where, because the world is polarized, we cannot trust any politician anywhere in the world, any party. We have no idea who's paying for what. Second, Vivek, we cannot trust any media. We cannot. So the only hope that remains is the private sector. So private sector, because the Subways and the Starbucks and the Taco Bells are in all these communities, and having worked in those communities, there are drive-by shootings, there are homeless people entering these places, making them dirty, etc., etc. These stores are shutting down. And I'm at a loss to know that, hey, there's a business case for you to actively involve in peace building, in trauma relief. But that is where we have to be bold, and we have to find those enlightened leaders at the top.
I'm sorry to interrupt here, Mandar, but I'm just trying to say that, trauma relief, obviously, because, fundamentally somebody is unhappy. Fundamentally, there is, anger. But at the same time, fundamentally somebody is hungry. So fundamentally somebody is homeless and he has a gun. He has access to gun. He knows he can kind of get away with a crime. So I'm just trying to say that I agree. You were absolutely on point when you said it's a very complex situation and there's no silver bullet that we can find out here. But don't you think it's going to be a common of a stick and a carrot approach? I mean, you have to deal with the trauma, but you also have to deal with...
Agreed. I'm not justifying any type of violence. Okay, so that is where the law enforcement, they have to do their job. They have to do their job and implement the law that that people have to comply by. If law enforcement doesn't do their job, then as a civil society, I'm in trouble. Like, mera madad kaun karega?
Right.
But where the dimension where I'm coming from is, if you look at a poor person in villages in India, for example, they may not have anything to eat, but they will share their meal if you go knock on their door. So there is a sense of contentment. There is a sense of, I'm here for a short while. That spiritual dimension is naturally present in the subcontinent and definitely in India. It's not a big word, like spirituality is just humanity, right?
Right.
Go to the poor person on the streets in Los Angeles, they are angry.
Yeah.
That is where I'm saying that unless that anger is managed, and make the person responsible for his, what do you want to do? That is where entrepreneurship comes in. Silver platter spoon services, like, free homes, like that's not the long-term solution. So that is where we have to come together as private sector, which is, all about entrepreneurship, try something new, invest, and the peace dimension, the inner healing dimension. One without the other, like peace, prosperity, have to come together. Otherwise, it's not a holistic solution.
Right. No, very fascinating observation. In fact, it reminds me of how, a friend of mine, kind of an American from the Valley, kind of came here and it's like spent like maybe around 3 weeks backpacking, through the cities. And, his one statement when he kind of, when we spoke towards the end of his journey was very interesting. He said, Vivek, this seems like a very special country because, when I look at the people out here, the poor, I mean, a lot of them don't seem to be having a lot of stuff with them. I mean, they don't seem to be having a lot of money. They don't seem to be having a lot of materialism and all that. But they don't seem to be necessarily unhappy. And that was, to me, was like like, he says, I just see people laughing. And so maybe it's a philosophy. Maybe it's our whole approach about, maybe the whole elements of fatalism, destiny. I don't know what. But, there's something in our culture which kind of allows us to probably be happy and at peace with what we have, and perhaps that's why I think the urban cities don't necessarily reflect some of the other inner cities that you're talking about. What would you say to that reaction?
See, it's like we have to take the best of both cultures, right? Here the problem is, यार मेरे लाइफ में ऐसा ही लिखा है, क्या करेंगे, सबको मरना ही है एक दिन, right? That is not good. Also, you have to demand what is, you have to get. वहां पे ये चलता है यार, छोड़ना यार, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, दे दे उसको 100 रुपए दे दे यार, उसको भी पगार नहीं मिलता है, दे दे. So we contribute to that corrupt cycle, right? So that is where we have to learn from the West.
Right.
There are laws, there are punishments, and you better be serious about it.
Right.
The West has something to learn from the Eastern dimension, quality of life, inner well-being, and those are gifts that are not limited to India. anybody universally can have access to that inner peace, inner world. That is what makes the Indic wisdom universal. And
Absolutely.
that is where the Indian civilization has to take ownership of it, that, the world is in need of peace. And unless inner peace dawns, caring dawns, compassion dawns, just it's not a holistic solution.
Right. Right.
And business, I mentioned, it's all about, like Ukraine-Russia war, Israel-Palestine conflict, mass shootings, drugs, gangs. There's a business model. If we are smart, if we work together, we can easily crack that business model and design a solution where people can get paid.
Right.
Like in 1999, I think the bubble that we had, Y2K, many Indians went to the US, right? They're IT professionals. Today, the time is absolutely the right time for IT professionals to also activate, because it's a worldwide issue. Violence is a worldwide issue, from Malaysia to Anchorage, Chile to Mongolia. But IT should stand for inner transformation activists.
Right? You know what? We've been good in one IT anyway, right? The information technology. So, and inner transformation for eons now.
Yeah. So from our side, we have made a module. It's called Be the Change. And it's a module of about 1 hour that is on our Cities for Peace website.
Right.
It's a 1 hour module. Anybody can bring it into their own family life first, have a discussion about peace, because pandemic has left many scars. We have no idea who has gone through what.
Right.
And secondly, you can, if you like the module, you can bring it into your workplace, because you never talk about who is working on the team with you. You talk about business results, you talk about processes that need to be improved. You also talk about how we can improve, but you never talk about who. And so this module just becomes a catalyst to have those discussions. That is where I feel we can take ownership for peace on this day of international peace. So that is what I would like to, activate the people that are listening. Maybe a call to action is perhaps do the module at your own pace and bring that discussion in your workplace, whether you are at Microsoft, Tata. Look into your own supply chains. Look into, places where you can start the discussion in the workplace today. That how can Microsoft stand for peace? Tesla. All my resource materials are coming from conflict areas. I need to take responsibility of the violence in the conflict areas. Otherwise, there is a pinch on my supply chain. So that is where I feel this call to action could be, whoever is on the Thinkly app chat, just reflect on your own life, your own influence, your organizational influence, and start with your own family, start with your own child's school, for example. Because activism is something that, grows with time. It's not like a flip of a button and then fan turns on. So slowly build that culture of peace, and wherever I go, I will bring peace mindset.
Right. So wonderful. I think you've kind of answered some of the questions that Rohit, Nirmal, Rahila, Shruti were talking about, really about, how do we negotiate, how we think about peace, very, very nuanced answer. I think we've kind of gone over time, but if it's okay with you, maybe 2-3 more questions. If you're scheduled.
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay, great. So I was very curious when I kind of looked at, when I looked at your resume, and very interesting. You're involved in multiple projects, but there's one which talks about Purpose Innovation Lab. And I think purpose, for example, I think is really a very less understood word. And I think a lot of time people don't realize the importance of having purpose in life, right? Some of your thoughts about purpose, and would love to hear about
that. So purpose is like gives a direction to your life, okay, and that can be either an individual or an organization. So an individual needs to have certain idea of what is the purpose of his being born in this time, with this experience, what he should do. That reflection needs to happen time to time. And for that, you need some tools, reflection tools, okay, which is, a calibration between inner purpose and outer purpose, my action. Same can be done in organizational level also, because organizations also say that on their website, that, hey, this is my purpose, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to invest now my CSR into the 1, 2, 3, right? And that gives some direction to the impetus and the actions and the impact. Purpose Innovation Lab was born because, my work in Los Angeles, the question we were asking was, what else can be the purpose of a police officer? Because usually police come after the incident, right? So the overarching purpose statement that was there was, what else can be the purpose of a police officer? And so through this lab approach, the thought came like, can a police officer become a peace officer? Yeah. And then once you have that, certain choices in your life get made, right? Same thing is true for an organization. Like, what is the purpose of your organization? 1, 2, 3. Leave some white space. And if you are an enlightened organization, an enlightened leader, that's what the lab is meant for. What else can be the purpose of your organization? And that is where I feel to introduce the axis of enlightenment, Vivek. Axis of enlightenment is, we have walked, business class seats हो गया, Marriott hotels हो गया, Cancun travel हो गया, सब हो गया. एक पॉइंट आता है जब भी हम साला विचार करते हैं कि what next यार? What next? How do I leave my legacy? Ratan Tata has left his legacy, but what can I do to leave the legacy of my organization, my work? And it can be a small business also. It doesn't have to be a big company. So Purpose Innovation Lab is for that type of an enlightened leader to reimagine their purpose through their own internal and external ecosystems. Because ecosystems are intertwined, no, Vivek? So, if you're an organization, there's an ecosystem that values your existence. If you crush, they will crush with you. So that is where we design these labs with, stakeholders from inside and the periphery ecosystems. To have just a fun-based conversation, because at the end of the day, purpose, even though sounds like a serious word, it should also be fun, because that is where innovation comes, right? So actually, you should have no purpose.
Nice. And then, you also involved with the, I think with the institution of the legendary second Secretary General, Dag Hammarskjöld. I hope I pronounced him right. What's the kind of work that you're doing there, and and really what's it been to be part of an organization like that?
So I was appointed as an advisor to the UN special project, private sector for youth-led peace building. And so we are using the Purpose Innovation Lab to engage the private sector. Can we create opportunities through these labs and test those opportunities, whether my business and the staff, can they get involved in actively promoting peace and justifying it because there is a return on investment? Yeah, so that is the one activity. Second activity is youth-led peace building, where that is the reason why I'm here at MIT World Peace University in Pune. Because youths don't have a baggage of the past, right? And they need to take ownership of the future. And every young person today has a phone. So they are a storyteller. So that is where we are inspiring the youth through certification training programs to learn how to become a peace builder, a bridge builder.
Right.
And take ownership, take internships, do projects worldwide, because that's what the pandemic has taught us, that, hey, you can be based in India, you can do an impact anywhere. So that youth as a peace builder could be good on your resume. And the bottom line, Vivek, is, there are mega projects, engineering projects, where I used to lead pipeline design projects. Technical design, we know how to do it because that is the curriculum in the engineering curriculums. It's diameter of the pipe, bends, all this we know. That is called technical de-risking. But project doesn't stall because of technical risk. It stalls because of the non-technical risk. Because it goes through some farms, some agitation, and whatever the non-technical risk is, the project stalls. And that is money. So engineers also need to learn how to be peace builders, because their company corporate affairs has no idea. Yeah, so engineers need to take that ownership that, hey, my job is not done just by designing a pipeline, engineering. I need to learn how to manage conflict, agree to disagree. So that is where youth in engineering curriculums also need to, inculcate these kind of modalities in their curriculum. So if anybody is listening that is a forward-thinking educational leader, college professor, like, let's collaborate, because youth today are looking for meaning
Right.
to their life. They have everything.
Right.
They want meaning in their life. And there is, I would say, no higher meaning than promoting peace, compassion,
Absolutely.
happiness.
Absolutely.
So that's
Wonderful. Yeah. And just to kind of, move towards a closure, I'm just trying to, kind of merge the question asked by Nirmal, Rahila, Shruti, and Jare. Saying that when you think about peace building, point number one, what are the trends that are coming up? I mean, I think you've already touched upon them. The whole idea is going back to the root cause of, the inner peace. But what are the trends? Secondly, what role can technology play? And I think I was saying that there are obviously some stuff that technology has done by, for example, making counseling available very easily, and you've got these apps like Breathe and all that stuff, right? So that's one. And the third one is somebody who wants to start on this journey, what should be a good starting point? So if you could kind of touch upon them, trends, technology, and how does one start about making a difference in this side?
Yeah. So a trend, I don't know what the trend I am embarking on is Indic wisdom in deepening the impact of peace building programs. You can think of UN programs, USAID funded programs in your own city. Indic content, which means managing trauma, pranayama, yoga, etc., needs to be integrated just like a homeopathy pill, small pill, but does wonders. Yeah. So think about, like, would you like to be part of that trend? Because even though we know that अरे yoga pranayama से बहुत अच्छा है, वो बहुत अच्छा का impact नहीं है. वो अच्छा state का तुम क्या करते हो यार? That we need to integrate now worldwide. The world is the marketplace. And second is what I told, that the Be the Change module, it's a 1 hour module. It will get you started. It's a 1 hour module. We will, through Karishma, I would love to give you a discount code just for you to participate in this. The discount code is take 50 BTC. So if you can just type in the chat TAKE 50 BTC and just go on the website, do the module, do it with a fresh beginner's mind, and write down any ideas that you get the module triggers in you.
Sure.
The more innovative the idea, the more Mandar will get excited to collaborate with you, right? So bring something amazing. Sports for peace, music for peace, AI for peace, Facebook for peace, because it's all about communication, no? Communication, when communication breaks down, violence starts in the mind, like, ये साला अच्छा आदमी नहीं है. क्यों? इसने मेरे को बर्थडे पे विश नहीं किया. मैं इसको हर बर्थडे पे याद रखती हूँ. That's it. Your mind is stuck. So communication can be enabled through these technologies, right? Festivals like Ganpati festival is going on.
Yeah.
Are you playing dinchaka music, or are you actually listening to abhangas from Tukaram, Ganeshwar, soaking into the meaning? So these are festivals. Their purpose is to bring people together. Raksha Bandhan, bring people together. Holi, bring people together. We should not get caught up in the noise that is created through these, So go back to our own Indic culture. What is my culture? Where do I come from? What did my grandfather do? Great grandfather, what was his name? No idea. So we have so much to be proud of that, after 200, 300 years of British rule, 1,000 years of Islamic rule, we are still doing Satyanarayan Puja. We are still doing Raksha Bandhan. We are still having these places of worship like Meenakshi Amman Temple, Chidambaram Temple. I had no idea, Vivek, of these South Indian temples. No idea, zero. So that is where the call to action is: go back and study and be proud about your own culture. And there is a need for that culture to be democratized.
Right. Fascinating. I think such a nuanced and deep answer. I think it just kind of gives a different meaning to why do we have these cultures? Why do we have these roots? And I think the whole reason for having this festivities is really to ensure that there's IT, inner transformation is like, we are at peace. So really, really appreciate. I think thank you so much, Mandar, for taking the time out. It was a pleasure having you. In fact, would love to take the conversation forward with you and say, why not build a peace community on Thinkly? So
I think that will be a great commitment to make on this International Day of Peace.
Wonderful.
And Karishma will be very happy because that is what she and I had also talked about in the first call we made.
Wonderful. But thank you so much. Pleasure having you over. Right?
All the best. This is a great initiative, Vivek. Congratulations to you.